Welcome to Act 2 You're On. Join us weekly at our studio roundtable as Rhonda, Kate, and Linda invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy. Launch your next great act with authenticity and purpose.
Summon your courage, superstar, and step into the limelight. So grab a coffee
or a martini,
and let's set the stage for a grand entrance. It's Act 2.
You're on.
Greetings, friends. I'm Linda Ty, and I have the great pleasure of podcasting with my two dynamic A2IO podcast hosts,
Kate Levy. And I'm Rhonda Garvin-Conaway, and we are joined by our very talented producer, Kathy Carswell.
And so we are thrilled today to talk with Bevin Mugford. We met her actually at the Metro West Women's Conference. She captivated us with the talk that she gave. We all fell in love with her, and we couldn't wait to talk to her on our podcast. So, and just one thing I just want to say to our listeners before we get started is, have you ever met someone or certainly know of someone who is highly influential and super successful, and you think, how'd they do it? Like, what's your secret? We are so fortunate to have Bevin Mugford on the show today because she's one of those people. She's one of those people you think, how'd she do it? How'd she get so successful? Like, what is her secret? What did she do? She's going to share maybe some of her secrets with us today. So let me give you a little bit of a background. Bevin is a dynamic executive with over 15 years of experience in leading people, training high performance teams, and building a startup from the ground floor. She is host of a weekly chat series called Thursday Thrive, author of Saturday Meditation blog, and an in-demand public speaker. A mom of four, Beven is self-subscribed nerdy researcher, and CrossFit junkie. Awesome. I love CrossFit too. It's great. So thank you so much, Beven, for being here today.
Thank you for having me with you. I really, really feel blessed to be not sitting in the same room with you, but at least looking across the Zoom screen at you.
We are as well. So give us a little bit of your path. Tell us about your path.
Wow. Okay. We'll do it at 10,000 feet, and you'll cut me off if I'm going in a direction that you want me to adjust. So my story is kind of interesting. I got married very, very young, had children very young. In fact, my first child was born when I was 20 years old. So if you do the math, I didn't have time to finish college before I started my family. And so the first 10 years of my adult life was spent juggling, finishing school, and having 4 children. So I had 4 children in 6 years, all by the time I was 26. And then eventually did finish my degree. And at 30, I was ready to take on the world as a professional. It's a complicated landscape when you're 30 years old with 0 on your resume. There just aren't a lot of doors that will open for you. And so I sat and I did research and I did some soul searching, maybe a little crying, a lot of crying, and had to figure out, what can I do? Where can I go where with my grit, determination, drive, chutzpah, I can achieve? I need an industry, honestly, that has some low barriers to entry, that has a high upside for someone like me. The obvious choice that presented itself was real estate. So real estate, you don't even have to have a college degree. You just need to take a licensing and then go on out there and prove yourself. And so I stepped through that door, began my career, quickly became a top agent, then transitioned into a brokerage owner. And then when my, at the time, husband's career started to take off for him, we began to move across the country. I shifted into consulting in the real estate, but we ended up landing in, okay, hold on. I forgot a part of the story that's really important because I want you to feel sorry for me for a second. Okay. So when I sold real estate, we lived in South Florida, and we lived on the water in South Florida. And I sold luxury properties that were oceanfront and riverfront properties. Okay. So do you have the tropical picture in your head with the palm trees and the sunset and all things of that lifestyle? My husband's career took us to Northwest Indiana. I'm really not harshing on my beautiful Midwest friends because they are amazing people that live in the Midwest. But the weather was created from, I don't know, like somebody who really wanted to punish the human race is what I've decided. And there is no such thing as luxury oceanfront real estate in Northwest Indiana. And so when we moved there, I did do consulting, but I really had this moment of, what the heck am I going to do with my life now? Because I can't bring my book of business and real estate. That's tied to the land. What I did and what I was good at doesn't really exist here. So now I need to reinvent myself again, this time because I was a trailing spouse. So it was another moment of kind of feeling sorry for myself, sitting at the kitchen table, maybe crying a little bit, but then saying, okay, put on your big girl panties and start to do some research about what you could shift into. And I ended up doing some research and finding an organization. I do want to say their name because I think they're really impactful for anybody that's listening today. It's called I Relaunch. And it's an organization really designed for women who have had a gap in their career, mostly due to child rearing. So you had a career, you stopped, had your kids, now you want to relaunch your career to go back in. Well, I wasn't relaunching my career. I was the other part of who they worked with, the trailing spouse syndrome. So I needed to reinvent myself into a new career. So they were having a conference in a few weeks, and I went all by myself, flew from Chicago to New York City all by myself to the Stern School of Business to attend this conference. And it was by going to that conference and listening to the keynote lunchtime speaker that I ended up meeting who would become my CEO, who we then would found Peach together back in 2013. So moral of the story is go to conferences and meet really cool people because you never know what doors are going to open. And that really was where I began my true calling, my true path into entrepreneurship, building company, and had incredible opportunities over the last 8 years to stand up a sales function from the ground floor, to stand up an L&D function from the ground floor, to work with incredible women building a brand, to pivot the company 2 times. So many stories that we could dig into in the world of entrepreneurship and what it takes to get started and what it takes to keep going. And it's a passion space for me. You can even hear the energy in my voice. And it has been a most delightful journey for the last 8 years.
Wonderful. That's amazing. So I have a question for you that sort of, I think that leads really well into is your philosophy on timing and luck in starting a business.
Yeah.
Was it luck that brought you there? Just happened to be the right timing and you made it happen. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I have to paint the scene a little bit more because, again, I kind of want you to feel sorry for me. So there's this really an abomination of architecture that, sorry for anybody who's in architecture, called a split level ranch, where your living space is actually the basement. So it's really dark. Okay, so I'm really affected by light. And when we moved from Florida, lots of sunlight, to Northwest Indiana, it was a split level ranch where I was downstairs in this darkness and feeling sorry for myself. And when I was doing the research and I was doing the reading, and this is during the time I read Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In and all of that, sort of this is where my brain space was. And feeling so deeply sorry for myself, I just had this moment of thinking, God darn it, I probably said a swear, 7. The world is not going to come find you feeling sorry for yourself, sitting in the basement. You're not going to get lucky. Luck can't find you when you're hiding down in the hole of this living room that's the basement. You have to just go out and do something to make your own luck. Yes, people say when they make it, they're like, oh, it was good timing. And they always put luck in there. But the bottom line is they were doing something to have that luck find them, for that timing to be right. And so, my past life is in athletics. And so, literally moving my body is a big part of how I've done things in my life. So I just sat there and said, you got to move your body. You got to go out and do something. And that was really what made me say yes to go to that conference. And at the end of the day, if you ask me, was that lucky that I met Janet, my CEO, who happened to be there speaking about a program at Harvard Business School, not even about the company that she was building? Was that lucky? Hell yeah, it was. But it's because I took action to allow that luck to find me and that timing to be right. So go out and make your own luck by being out there and literally moving your body, connecting with people.
Oh, that's such an important part of wisdom for us to hear, but also for our listeners. You've also talked about reinvention, but there's definitely something putting yourself in the path of luck and get active. And I think that we often talk here about trying to get folks to realize they are the heroes of their life, and you have to step into and create whatever narrative you have to put yourself out there. I do know that when we heard you speak, which was so beautiful and so exciting as well, you talked about curiosity and creativity as being crucial strengths to learn to flex in the office and in your life. And I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think to really jump into this part of the conversation, I should do a little definition work here, because I often think that we think we know what things mean, but then when we dig down to the depth of it, there's a different reckoning within the word. So you think about curiosity. Curiosity is not, in its truest definition, is not just a search for any old information. Curiosity is a search for information that you can use to then make a decision. That's key. So you can make a decision. And sometimes the decision is you don't do anything. And other times the decision is you do something. But it's a specific search for information to inform decision making. So that's one. Creativity. Often people associate this with artistry. And that can be a part of creativity. Of course, there are creatives in the world, but applied to the workplace, what this really means is cognitive flexibility. So when you engage in a process, are you willing to be cognitively flexible to adjust with new information? So that's key, with new information. Now you see how curiosity and creativity come into this incredible dance. Curiosity asks, what is this? What's happening? What am I learning? What's the pattern? And creativity says, and how can I work with this? And how can I walk forward with this? And how can I grow? How can I learn? How can I invent? How can I iterate? And those two together, to me, are the cornerstone strengths that inform and drive entrepreneurship and being a business owner and often a trailblazer as well.
That makes total sense to us, for sure. And it's true. You have to be able to pivot. You need to be curious and be creative, right? You're always adjusting as you go along to what is the best path. And it's the curiosity and the creativity that takes you to events like you went and met your CEO. Like those are the things that drive you, and you feel that like, yeah, I should probably be there. That sort of hint of, I think, curiosity, right?
Yeah. And actually, can I tell a little bit more of that story? Because it's an illustration of creativity and curiosity, but it's also a little bit of the continuation of that story. Is that okay to jump in there? Yeah. So when I met Janet, so the way, as we all know, we've all gone to networking events. So there's a speaker and then there's networking time and then a speaker and then networking time. So she was the keynote speaker during lunch. And of course, she's so dynamic and incredible. The whole room queued up to try to talk to her afterward, including yours truly. And I was sort of at the back of the line. And by the time I finally got my way up to the front of the line, I knew I had 30 seconds to introduce myself and I wanted to make an impact. Now, before I tell you what I said to her, I need to give you a little bit of context. When she got up at the podium and her bio was read, it was all about being a Harvard Business School professor. She took the podium and she said, actually, there's one more thing that you don't know about me. I'm actually starting my third company. And so for those of you who are in the audience and annoyed by your bra, come talk to me afterward. I'll tell you what I'm doing. That's all she said. All she said. And of course, my curiosity goes, what the hell is she doing? Like, what is she building? Bras? She's talking about bras? And it just, my head started going like, question. So I get up to the front. So all I'm thinking about is, what is she doing with bras? And so I shook her hand and I said, hi, my name is Beven. I've had 4 children and I nursed them all and I hate my bra and I'd like to work for you. And Janet was shaking my hand and she goes, well, okay then. and just so that nobody's nervous, it's the first and the last time I used my boobs to get a job. But I definitely did address the elephant in the room, so to speak, of what the heck is she building? And maybe I could work for you. So she really actually did kind of connect and act sort of sparky around that. And I thought to myself, good job, Beven. You made your impact in 30 seconds or less. She gave me her card. She said, send me an email. Let's follow up after the conference. So I go home and I think to myself, okay, now how am I going to do this follow-up that's really good? And I didn't do it right away. I'm like, I'll wait one day because I'm sure everybody's emailing her right after. So I'm trying to strategize here. So I send her an email off with my resume, my bio, all the things. And a week goes by and she doesn't respond. So now what happens? I'm not sure. Am I allowed to say a swear on here? Could I say?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So the itty bitty shitty committee inside my head is like, oh yeah, silly girl, that Harvard Business School professor is not going to call you back. Nice try. That voice inside your head that says that you're just faker and you're not good enough. So I started going back into that feeling sorry for myself. And my husband, he's my ex-husband now, but my husband came home and I sort of complained about it. Not complained, but I just was feeling sorry for myself. And he said, show me the email. So I turned the email around. And remember, I'm a salesperson. I turned the email around. He looked at it for 2.2 seconds and then he turned it back and said, you're a salesperson, right? I said, yes. He said, you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm like, oh, why? Why? He goes, read your memo. It's like, nice to meet you at the conference this week or yesterday or whatever it was. He goes, hey, Beven, how many people do you think wrote that exact same memo to her? She probably has like 100 in her inbox that look exactly the same. You have to sell yourself in the memo, not in the body of the email. Like, oh my gosh, duh. So here's where creativity comes in. How can I do this differently? What does she need to read in the memo to open up my email? And I had no idea the name of the company. I had no idea what she was doing, but I knew that if she was starting something from scratch, that one of her first needs would be sales. And salespeople are really cheap to hire because you don't pay us until we actually get something through the door for you. So I changed my memo to Bevin Mugford, candidate for sales and recruiting position at, and I found something out there that said she was a board member of a company named Xera. So I was like, sales and recruiting position for Xera. She emailed me back in less than 30 minutes and asked for me to have a call with her. And it was because I repositioned myself to fill her need. There was no open position for a sales and recruiting position at Xera. That company didn't even exist. That had already been left behind, and the new company was called Peach. But I put in there something that caused her to open it and then say yes. So that's really the dance of creativity and curiosity coming into play that, again, allowed me to get lucky and get my email answered.
These stories are invaluable. I love your humor. Thank you for sharing this piece of yourself. When we've all talked about this conference that we had the pleasure of hearing you speak at, and the topic didn't necessarily allow, I think, for the humor to come through. And I'm just savoring every moment of this conversation. But as we reflect back on that talk that you gave, it makes me think about the topic of losing your son. And we know that not only through wonderful moments, but more so through those challenging moments. And you referred to many in your stories with us already, but the death of your son taught you something. And we were hoping you may be able to speak about what losing your son taught you about vulnerability and about bravery and leadership.
Yeah. Ooh, we could do a whole podcast just on that question. So I'm a mom of 4, and my second child died by drowning 3 years ago in the Long Island Sound. And my position at Peach is a very public position. I, before pandemic, was on stages better than 200 times a year. I was constantly in front of audiences, speaking on personal and professional development, delivering sales trainings, and really bringing forward our mission to be a force for good to help women thrive. And I really drove forward as a hard-nosed entrepreneur. And in many ways, the backstory of that is, if you think about it, I constantly felt the pressure that I needed to make up for lost time because I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years trying to get my degree, all the stuff that I missed out on because I had my family so young. I was in this state of like, I gotta catch up. So it was a world of where if someone put the bar here, I was like, well, if I'm going to catch up, I better actually achieve here. So it was this constant achievement mode. which meant that vulnerability wasn't even in my vocabulary. Emotions, feelings, vulnerability, that was just going to slow me down. And the world didn't need that from me. They needed my execution. They needed my performance at that A game level. And the world dynamically changed when I lost my son. And you start to see things and feel things that at first you don't want, but then you realize that this is part of being fully human, that our life is not promised to us to be pain-free. In fact, none of us are getting out of this alive. And so part of us being fully human, and frankly, part of us being leaders, is to learn how to be in places of pain. And instead of running away from it or hiding it or rushing to turn on the lights to make everyone feel better, we have to learn how to hold it. And my son's death taught me how to hold pain and to not be afraid of it. And what that allowed me to do is to meet other people in their places of pain. And that's vulnerable leadership. And that's what changes lives. And I have felt profoundly honored to have the opportunity to share what I've learned and to connect with people in a place that most people don't even want to recognize exists, but it does. And it's actually a place where we can grow together.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So sorry for that loss. But this moment is precious, and I feel like we're able to hold something with you right now.
Thank you.
I think vulnerability has come into the conversation in the last few years. And I think it is it's a beautiful and very sad thing that you've shared, that that if we can talk about, we must talk about. But I also think in your journey, you've mentioned several times about feeling sad and just being in that place where you cry your way through and you feel sad for yourself. And then the next day you get up and you have to move forward, and you can't always put things aside. You can't escape them. And what cannot be avoided has to be endured. And you have to go on for your other children, and because you deserve to be successful, and the world needs you to be successful and to be as positive as you can be when you're not feeling sad for yourself. And that's a beautiful, tough part of being human. And it's so invaluable for you to share that with us. So thank you for that. And I know we were all so taken with you and with your story at the conference, but also now as we're seeking to lift up other folks and help them launch and help them reimagine what comes next. It is good to know that people who are successful also struggle, and they're also human, and they bleed and they cry, and then they get up the next day and they think, what does the world need from me today? And it's very encouraging, even as it's very sad.
Yeah, we have the ability to hold both. And for anyone who is connected to me on Instagram or Facebook, it has been incredibly important for me to show the authenticity of a loss journey. There are days where you feel super strong and you do things like handstands and headstands and climb ropes at the CrossFit gym. And I show that. And then there are days where you sit on a beach and you wail for your child who drowned in the water that you're literally looking at. And I show that. And we can hold both. That is the human experience. It's not one or the other. And so I've tried to show that through photography and also through words. And so thank you for what you said.
Yeah, I think that when you spoke at the conference and you talked about this there, and the way you talked about holding the pain, it really has had such an impact on me. I've thought about it ever since. And I do believe if we can hold collectively together, and we can share our vulnerabilities, our pain, our our, whatever those happen to be, our fears, it is what brings us together. It's what we all share. We all share on some level, those feelings. And certainly not, I'm not saying that to, say that the death of a child feels way more than anything that I've had to experience in my life. But I know that you have said too, very generously, that we all have a loss journey of some kind. We all, it's the human thing. It's the human experience. For whatever reason, we have that. And so, so thank you for bringing that out and being that force in the world to connect us that way. Cause I really feel that it's just a really powerful way to help us expand, be better, grow, and be human. Can
I say one more thing to what you just said? I think this is important. Losing my child is the worst thing that happened to me. Yeah. You also have a worst thing that happened to you, and it's different, but it's the worst thing that you know. And that pain is real, and it's equally as painful to you because it's the worst thing that you know. And we need to meet each other in that truth. There is not a worse pain. It's literally, what is your worst and what is my worst? And that is the same. And that's loss.
I really appreciate that. We tend to do that comparative piece. Yes. And push away and, well, that's not valid because it's not this. At least it's not this. And whatever it is for you in your life experience, that's enough. And it's your challenge, or it's your opportunity, or it's your moment. And that's enough. You don't have to shush it away.
Yeah.
Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That's also just another way that we are all connected. We are living through this weird period where we are, going through rampant individualism, and we are very divided. And actually, we are connected in every sort of human way possible. And, separation is a delusion, and you're sharing your pain does connect to everybody feels lost. And I think that, this will be a powerful conversation for many, many folks to hear. But
thank you.
And I definitely feel like we have these themes that are coming up of opportunity and reinvention as a result of seemingly tough stuff, or truly tough stuff that you experience. And then in that is a moment that we can create something beautiful and exquisite out of something that we would never dream or wish upon for ourselves or others.
That's right. It can be both.
So I'm wondering if it's possible at this point in time, even though you have shared moment after moment of wisdom, for our listeners to hear one thing that we could take away as our golden nugget, is that one item that we could touch upon. And if you could put those into words, that one thing that we can put in our pocket to take with us from this conversation, what might you share?
Yeah. So I think this is really a message for someone who's at that place of, do I move forward in this? How do I move forward in this next chapter? Do I take this change, this risk, this adjustment? And what I would offer to you is learn how to dance. And when I say that as someone who cannot dance, but I can dance. And this is what I mean. There are two parts of who I am. I am an uber, ridiculously nerdy researcher. I want the information to know how the experts do it and learn the best practices. And I'm an entrepreneur. And I like to learn by doing. And I like to take a step forward and make a mistake and learn from a mistake and then adjust and iterate and go. Again, this curiosity and creativity. So I have learned how to dance with these two parts of me. I'll let sometimes the nerdy researcher lead, and then sometimes I let the brave entrepreneur lead. And the two of them together create a beautiful dance that allows me to be balanced in how I build and grow and walk forward. So I encourage you to figure out what are your two unique pieces of you and learn how to put them into a dance. And don't let one lead the whole dance. You actually have to trade which is leading and when. That's how you step forward to bring the best version of yourself to the world and whatever project might be sitting in front of you.
I love that. Invitation to dance.
Yes.
Invitation to dance.
And a conversation full of nuggets. And that's another beautiful one. Unfortunately, I have been assigned the worst job. I like to be the nugget person, but I am now the timekeeper, which means we're coming to the end of our time together. Boy, Beven, we do hope that we get to speak to you again, because there's so many things to unpack in this conversation, and you are wise, and you are giving lots of messages that I think the world needs to hear right now. So thank you for this conversation. But before we go, I wonder what comes next for you.
Yeah, it's such a good question. I'm at my own pivot point. I have realized that through my work that I've done with my company, I've been able to reach a certain audience. And after the death of my son, I'm realizing that my audience is big, because everybody has experienced loss. And I'd like to really start to focus my conversation around loss. And particularly in the face of pandemic, because we have collective loss that we are learning and just really starting to grapple with the effects of now. And so I'm in a process of stepping out on my own and starting a leadership development firm where there will be training, and there will be executive coaching, and there will be speaking, and it will be centered around what loss has taught me, and then applying it to the business setting so that leaders can learn how to be vulnerable, wholehearted leaders to meet their staff, their employees, their teams in place of wholeness. And that's what I really think the world needs now. And so I'm in the process of my own next chapter as well. And it's pretty exciting. And I'll continue writing on Instagram and in Facebook, my weekly Saturday meditations about loss as well. So that's part of the picture also.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I do follow you on both and read them both, and they're really wonderful. So thank you so much for being here today with us, Beven, and sharing your incredible wisdom, your energy, your heart. You're really just a remarkable woman, and it's just very powerful to be in the Zoom room with you.
Thank you. Likewise, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I look forward to more in the future.
Marvelous. Well, we'll hold you to that. And I know folks are going to want to learn more about you. And as Beven has said, you can find her on Instagram, Facebook, or on LinkedIn.
And there aren't a lot of Bevins in the world, so that totally plays to my advantage.
Yeah.
Not a bevy of Bevins.
Full circle.
We're so grateful for you. Thank you for today. And of course, special thanks to our very talented producer, Kathy Carswell, for making this all possible today.
It is left for me to say, go forth, be brave, live well, and do good. It's Act 2. You're on.
Act 2 You're On was brought to you by Act 2 Share Our Stage. You can find us at a2yo.com and also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please listen and subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. You can support us using Patreon. Thanks for listening.